Wait a minute. All right. Sponsors. Okay. We are going to talk about the Hamilton Standard hydromatic propeller. I like the name because it sounds like something that belongs in a 1950 something Chrysler.
Hydromatic.
Hydromatic.
I could be Prince Lightning.
Oh, very good. We should have you come up here and do that, for the camera.
I was thinking it on Friday out loud. Apparently, I didn't realize. I thought I was humming it in my head.
The fact that you know this words to a musical is very cool.
Oh, I know every word of that one.
I know I had a friend one time who actually we were talking about music. He's like, I don't want to admit it, man. He goes, but I kind of like listening to the show too. And so I'm like, weirdo. And then I actually they're pretty good. I can see why.
Some of them.
All right, the hydromatic, or the air screw, as the Royal Air Force would probably call it. Now, I will tell you right off the bat here, there are different versions of this propeller. So when you see a different version, go, that's not what we talked about, well, because that's a different version. So, Tobias, what was that I said?
You said there's different versions.
Okay, so everybody's on. All right. And unfortunately, I don't remember exactly which version I brought here into my PowerPoint, but I guess I will find out. Probably the opposite. And really where the versions lie is what they do with the oil pressure. So it's not a big deal. Some are going to use a double acting governor and some are not going to use a double acting governor. I think I do the double acting governor in these slides. So, all right. So we're going to talk about the hydromatic, the Hamilton Standard, Hamilton Standard. Hamilton Standard hydromatic propeller. We're going to talk basically about 3 different models. There's a lot more than 3, as I said. You can have, depending on how the oil goes, with the double acting governor or the single acting governor. But when I'm talking about, really, we could talk about a constant speed version. Which would be your base. And then we could add on to it the constant speed feathering. So obviously, if you think about it now, the constant speed, just the base constant speed model, what kind of airplane would that go on?
Single engine.
Single engine. Definitely not something small. You're not going to see it. Yeah. The Hamilton Standard hydromatic for the Cessna 150 just came out. Yeah, it's
wide is the
yeah.
wingspan?
Okay, then the constant speed / feathering, which would go on a twin engine. Why? Multi-engine be, I guess, more appropriate, yes. Or the constant speed. Constant speed. Feathering. / reversing. We haven't talked a lot about reversing propellers. I don't know if I have many notes in here about reversing propellers, but what's the whole point of reversing the propeller?
To decrease your stopping distance.
Let's see, you can back up. Look cool. Back in the hangar. It's to decrease your stopping distance, which in some ways makes sense. I had a customer, in some ways doesn't. For example, I had a customer, the Baron, who had reversing props. And it was enormously expensive to have the modification, to maintain the props, and the equipment for it, so that you could save some money in brakes. And when you consider the price of brakes and the price of a prop, brakes are pretty cheap, relatively speaking. But anyway, but if you're talking about a very large, heavy aircraft, well, yeah, reversing props are really going to help you slow down. So, especially if you're talking about World War II stuff, unimproved airways, things like that. So, but when we talk about reversing props, you don't normally say reversing, you just say beta range. Right, so alpha range is forward, beta range is backwards. So beta range would be, I actually do have it in here somewhere, like 0 degrees backwards. What? Gatorade, right? Yeah, okay.
The movie Hook, Bangarang? Bangarang?
What?
The movie Hook? With Robin Williams?
Yeah, Hook?
We're lost. Never mind.
Peter Pan
It's
with
a
Robin
Peter
Williams?
Hey, I got that part. What does he say?
The guy with the red hair, Roscoe, that's just one of the things he yelled out was Bangarang.
Bangarang?
Bangarang.
I don't know what that means.
That was his call sign for the rest of the boys.
We're gonna edit this part out.
Yes, we will, because it's just lost everybody. There goes all my YouTube followers. Sorry, YouTube. All right.
Welcome back.
Okay. Yeah. If you're just joining us, we're just getting started.
Bangarang.
Okay. This is where I can really start cutting out some stuff because we've already talked about this. Although I'm not, apparently. 3 main components. Well, you got the hub assembly, you got the dome assembly, you got the distributor valve. So, got the hub assembly, got the dome assembly, and we got our distributor valve. And we're going to need all of these things to make it work. Of course, we've got the hub assembly. You know, it's kind of the same thing we've already looked at. What's the thing called in the very center? Spider. All right. Then attached to the spider, we have the blades. Let me see if we got pictures here. So I don't want to write all this down. I don't think. Oh, there we go. Yep, not a good picture for what we're talking about. There we go. Blade. We have the ring gear segment that attached to the blades. We can kind of go through those. There we go. Got the spider, blades. You have to have gears, excuse me, on the blades. The hub and blade assembly consists of the spider, the barrel, the blades. The spider's central core is splined to fit the engine's propeller shaft. Anyway, we've already kind of covered all this, so we can sort of skip through that and just get to the meat of things, if you will. Sound good? So I'm not going to have the hub assembly. I already wrote that. I'm just going to put, because and then I had a bunch of points here, hub. Blades, blade gear segments, barrel halves, support blocks, spacers, bearings. You have the dome assembly, which consists of the... Want me to write all that stuff?
No.
Okay. And then we have the dome assembly. Had the pitch change mechanism, the dome shell, the piston, the rotating cam cylinder, stationary cam cylinder, 2 pitch stops, and I cover those in a minute. Low pitch stop lever assembly. B, C, D, E, the low pitch stop, lever, assembly, and according to this, it directs the oil, although we're going to call it a distributor valve, and then the governor. All right, so the one we're going to talk about, apparently here, uses a double acting governor. Same operating principle as what we saw before, so same operating principle. Same operating principle, but delivers oil to both sides of prop piston. All right, so up till now, we basically had a piston inside of the hub, and we either put oil against it and pushed it, which would make the blades either go to high pitch or low pitch, depending on if it was single or twin, or we drained oil off and the piston was allowed to go forward. And what was behind the piston? It's just a spring. There's no oil. All right, but now with the hydromatic, you're going to have oil no matter what type it is. You have oil on both sides of the piston, if you will. And in some models, well, you have the blades, and what's going to make it's non-counterweighted, so what makes the blade go flat, low pitch, high RPM? Centrifugal twisting force with engine oil pressure on some of them. Because you just want a little bit of help. You don't need a lot, so just run the engine oil pressure. But on the other side of the dome, to make them to go into feather or into a higher pitch, notice I said feather this time, even if it's a twin, we're going to use engine oil pressure to go to higher pitch. I'm sorry, governor pressure. Okay, because there's no counterweights. So the way this is going to feather is going to be with oil pressure, unlike all of the other props we've looked at. Yeah.
If there isn't oil pressure, if you lose your engine, there's oil pressure.
You won't.
You don't.
You know. There's an oil tank,
Okay.
and the oil tank for the engine has got a standoff. So, oil tank.
Mhm.
So you got pipe comes out, and then a pipe comes out. See the difference in height? So there's your oil.
Okay.
So if you lose oil, you're going to get to this point, and this is 2 engine. That's noisy. All right. So there you go. Get to this point. So oil.
You lose oil to your engine. But
You lose, and so now the pilot's going to see I've lost engine oil pressure. It's time to feather it. Here's the feathering oil comes out of here. So
Okay.
feathering oil. So have a lower standpipe. So you save just enough for it to work. Kind of like reserve in a motorcycle, right? You still do that? You just have like a reserve?
I don't have a separate switch, but it goes and it starts blinking at me and yelling at me. It's like, hey, you're low on gas.
Of course. It's fancy things. All right.
There's no reserve. That's the one. No, unless it's touring.
Let's see.
Only touring and cross-country bikes have reserve tanks.
I was thinking about dirt bikes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know about I don't know about street bikes.
I think dirt bikes do have reserves.
Okay, the governor includes additional components. It has a high pressure transfer valve. And that is used to block constant speed mechanism out of the prop control when the prop is being feathered or unfeathered. So used to block constant speed mechanism Okay, so you can't say I want the prop to feather while the governor's saying, whoa, 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 now you're going too slow. Low pitch, low pitch, low pitch. And like, well, I want it to feather, so we got to block it out. So use block constant speed mechanism out of propeller control system. Out of prop control system when prop is being feathered. Feathered or unfeathered. Oh, we need a pressure cutout switch. And that is used to terminate the feathering operation.
So that's basically just telling it whether or not it should shut off into feather, or
No, it's when to
Or-
shut off the feathering pump. Mhm.
So this is as a little pressure on both sides of the piston and it doesn't have any counterweights?
Nope. Want me to go through it? Let's go through it. Just take a look at what's going on and come back. All right. That's it. Hydromatic. We could just read that right there and then we'll be done.
Lights off.
No. All right. So oil, this is my writing up here because some of it's a little confusing. Let's just make a look here. Underspeed. We're underspeed. And all right, guys, it says things are on the decrease. How's the situation? Oh, how's the situation, Gov? Things are on the decrease. Counterweight, the flyweights are in.
Underspeed.
Underspeed. All right, so we have the governor. Let's take a look. Here's the governor gears right here. So we have engine oil pressure must be here. Goes through the governor gears. It is boosted. What is this little thing right there?
That's up. Check valve.
Check valve. Check valve. There we go. Okay, check valve. So when the pressure gets too high, it bleeds back. All right, so it's going to come up to here. Now the pilot valve, notice how the pilot valve works now. So it's dropped down. So because we are under speed, it will drop down the pilot valve. Then that's going to direct high pressure oil to come through and act on the back side of the dome. If it acts on the back side of the dome in this particular case and pushes it forward, it's moving it to a we're under speeding, so it's got to flatten it out. Now let's just think about the Macaulays and Hartzels that we've looked at. Let's take a look. Think about a single, because this doesn't have counterweights. So on a single engine Hartzell or Macaulay, oil pressure does what?
Low blade angle.
Low blade angle
Pushes it to a higher blade angle.
pushes it to a higher blade angle. Well, we should be all on the same page by now.
Because you don't want it to go. You want it to go flat if you lose pressure.
Yeah. Sure. That's true. All right, so let's go. My Cessna 182, right? Single engine, if you haven't noticed. And without oil pressure to the prop, it will flatten out. Okay? If I want to increase pitch, it does what? Sends oil pressure through the hub and pushes back against it, correct? So on a single engine then, deducting, oil pressure pushes this way, yeah? Spring pressure is this way. Oil pressure pushes it backwards, and it goes to a higher blade angle. So forward then, in a Macaulay or a Hartzell, would be spring pressure, centrifugal twisting force.
Low blade angle.
Low blade, backwards would be
High blade.
high blade. All right, now take a look at this. Are they doing the same thing?
Yeah.
We're trying to go to a low blade angle, so push the piston forward. It's the same thing. Again, some models of this won't use governor pressure to do that because you already have centrifugal twisting force. You could just use engine oil pressure to help it out. But we're going to use the double acting one. So here we go. It's just the pilot valve drops down. Now when it drops down, what does it do to the blue up here?
Pushes it out.
Right? It's going to come back through the center of the hub, out to the distributor valve, because there's a valve has to be in here now, because in all of the ones we looked at, you don't have three pipes down here. You got one big hole. So it's either pushing oil in or draining it out. That's all you have with all the Hartzells and Macaulays. Follow?
Are there check valves in that distributor that only allow it to flow through?
No, it's a realignment thing.
Oh.
All right, so it aligns one way and then aligns the other. But most of the time, yes, it's already just preset so that this particular blue line is to the front of the dome and these red ones are to the back of the dome. Just leave it that way, right? Doesn't have to do anything. It's just lined up. All right, so that makes sense there, hopefully? Okay. We'll read this. This condition results, for example, when the plane starts to climb from level, hang on. You can look at it. From level flight causing a decrease in airspeed while the power output from the engine to the prop remains unchanged, like going up a hill in a car. When this condition exists, the pitch setting in effect becomes too high, resulting in a net engine RPM drop to an underspeed condition that makes the flyweights droop in, moving the pilot valve in the position shown above. Oil is then flows to the inboard side of the piston. The resulting action twists the blades to a lower pitch, automatically allowing the engine to increase its speed to original RPM. Notice that they are going to call it inboard and outboard. So inboard is next to the engine, outboard is in the front of the dome. Everybody's with me so far? All right. Now we go into a overspeed. Hold your hat, Gov. Here we go again. I wish I could draw like that. That'd be so fun. Yep.
I learn a lot.
Doubt it. All right. So what does it do to the pilot valve?
Lifts it up.
Lifts it up. Okay. So same thing. We have oil coming in here, which it did before that was still blue. We have high oil pressure comes through here. Check valve. If it gets too high, it'll bleed off into here and just return. That's what's holding the pressure. And it's still going to come up right here. But last time it was aligned so that it could drop down and go this way. Now this time we're going to lift it up and allow the high pressure to go to the front, start pushing the dome back, which is going to drive it to a higher pitch and slow things down. The back side of the dome, it's still coming out of these two right here, is just going to come to here and now realign so that it goes back to the inlet side of the pump. Oil to front side or outboard side of the piston increases the pitch. Well, I'm not going to read all that because it just says the same thing I just said. On speed condition. Got to read what these guys say. Governor Flowitz. How goes it, Gov? Steady it goes. All right. Are we supposed to laugh? I don't know. So all it's doing is blocking it off. Notice it blocked it off. So we have the oil is going to come up in here and build up pressure. What happens to that built up pressure?
Goes to the check valve.
Goes to the check valve and just recirculates around.
So is that like, it's never going to be really on constant, right? It's going to always be.
In my opinion, not really. It's just, I'd love to see it, but I don't think so. I think it'll be almost all the time. I think it'll be very, very close to this right here. Almost all the time. When you're cruising, and it's going to drop a little bit, let a little bit of oil leak in. It's going to rise a little bit. It's just going to kind of just barely move. A little bit oil, a little bit oil, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. You're not going to get this wide variations at all. Just leaks. Yeah, but would it set perfectly like that and block this off for like an hour's flight? No, I don't think so. My opinion. All right, on speed condition. All right, we did that. There's a really cool old-timey movie I have in here.
Is it another 30-minute video?
Yeah. All right. Then we get to the distributor valve, which is a big deal here. Notice here's the propeller shaft. So this distributor valve is going to fit down inside the shaft, which is going to direct oil to where it's supposed to go. And as I pointed out, most of the time it's just a stationary item that is direct. It doesn't change, right? One pipe goes to the front, the other pipe goes to the back. So during normal operation, the distributor valve routes governor oil to the outboard face of the piston and engine oil to the inboard side. Okay, see right there how the side is different now? People are like, no, I didn't see that. Let me read that again. During normal operation, the distributor valve routes governor oil to the outboard and engine oil to the inboard. Okay, that's not what we just looked at, is it? Ours was a double acting governor that would direct governor pressure either inboard or outboard. But you can have a single acting governor, which is just like we've been talking about up until today, where high pressure governor oil goes to the outboard of the piston, or you don't, and you and instead of just draining, you drain that and then use engine oil on the back of the dome. So it'd kind of be like, again, instead of a double acting governor, this pilot valve wouldn't allow, I think I went too far. It wouldn't allow, the first one, it wouldn't allow this to happen, where this high pressure goes to the back of the piston. It would just realign and let engine oil pressure go to here and then bleed off the front. So engine oil to the inboard, bleed off the outboard.
Yeah.
Follow? Okay.
And governor oil goes to the front.
Governor goes to the front, just engine oil in the back. But that's okay because, oops, that was a good picture actually. Right there, there's your distributor valve. But normally, see, it has a realignment feature in there, which we're going to talk about a little bit. So, all right. So the distributor valve is here to facilitate feathering. And so if you think more about the single acting governor, I think it makes more sense. So during feathering, the distributor valve rotates feathered oil to the inboard side of the piston and conducts oil to the outboard. I don't want to confuse you. Well, let's read slower. During feathering, hang on. Maybe we should start in a different place. We'll come back to that. All right. So this is the dome assembly, and you can see we have one in class. What does this thing weigh? Ours, 150, 200 pounds? It's placarded, keep your fingers out, and you really do. The old-timey movie I'll show you is pretty cool. But this is how it works. It just,
That's the Swiss cheese.
yeah, well, they're lightning holes. Not from lightning, but to make it lighter, because this is like solid steel. It is really heavy. And so that's what happens. This is actually the inner dome. There's the piston. And so the piston moves back and forth in there and exerts a force which causes this to rotate and move in and out. And you almost have to just see it in operation, which I can't really do. Distributor valve, let me see, bearings, hub assembly. Should have put this other way. I like this one. 3 forces control the propeller blade angle. Centrifugal twisting moment, which tends to move the blades towards. If you get confused, just read it. Low pitch. Engine oil under pressure is supplied by the engine pump, which supplements centrifugal twisting moment, which is 2. They got it now on the outboard. And engine oil whose pressure has been boosted by the prop governor, which moves the blades towards high pitch. Now they're backwards. Now they're going the other way around. I told you it can get really confusing. So don't necessarily try and memorize which way is which, because this one's got engine oil here with centrifugal twisting force and governor back here. Follow?
Right now we would just been switching it.
And we've had it the other way around. So that's why I say there's so many different versions of this. And I've read, when I was preparing for this, oh no, okay, this is totally backwards. Let me look at this book, and I'll go to this book. Oh no, it's got it the other way around. So it's like, okay, I give up. As long as you get the idea, you've got the idea.
How will we know? Which one's which?
If you're working on it, you get the right book, and I'll tell you.
There you go.
Just get the model, get the book. I think this one matches, though, the cutout, the diagram that I have for you guys. So when you do your oral, we'll go with this one here. So underspeed. Governor spring 2, force exceeds centrifugal force by force generated by the flyweights. So we're underspeed, flyweights are going to go in. Okay, we're going to stick with this one now, hopefully. The pilot valve is lowered, uncovering passages in the boost pump drive shaft, which we know all about. Oil from the prop dome outboard drains. Okay, so now we're going to drain. Let me do that again. Oil from the prop dome inboard end drains. Okay, inboard end drains. And drains through the governor port. Engine oil from the engine oil pressure system flows to the prop dome outboard. So now it is backwards from where we started, because we're back. Now we're talking about single acting. And so in the Macaulay and the Hartzell, when the dome moved back, the piston moved backwards, it tended to make the blades go to a higher blade angle. Follow? Okay, this one is backwards. I'm trying to think, how would you memorize? I'm not going to hold you to memorize this necessarily. This is just not something I'm going to do on a test. Hey, in the hydromatic, when the oil to the front does what? I don't think it's that way. And when you do your oral, there's a little sheet, the laminated sheet you guys can look at, and so you can kind of remember it and look at the colors. So yellow is just our engine oil pressure. So engine oil pressure to the front pushes the piston back, moves this roller inside of the cam slot, which rotates the teeth, teeth rotate the blade goes to low pitch. Got it? It's really not a complicated thing, unless you start considering all of it. Well, it's not. You've been studying all this stuff. The only thing that's just different is we've just kind of switched a few things around.
Inboard or outboard?
inboard or outboard. So now we're saying, okay, if we're going to look at this, engine oil to the outboard, governor to the inboard. So engine oil pressure here on the front of the dome plus what is going to go to low pitch? Plus what other force?
Twisting force.
Okay. So now if I'm going to switch the slide, I'm guessing the next one is overspeed. You already know what it's going to do. What's going to happen to overspeed?
It's gonna drain out of there.
It's going to drain out of
The outboard.
outboard,
Outboard.
and we're going to pressure on the inboard. And where does this switching action take place that makes that happen? Is it in the governor or the distributor valve?
Nope. Governor.
There we go.
Governor.
Distributor valve doesn't
Good job,
get
Brian.
affected until later.
Yeah.
50-50.
All right. So governor, or let's take a look at the distributor valve. So the governor has the pilot valve, right? And the pilot valve will determine what's going to happen. But in this one, we've got engine oil pressure. Engine oil pressure is coming in here. Notice it goes from there into here, then into the gears, then out to the pilot valve. And it looks like it is just recirculating around because actually, I'm sorry, it's in a drain position. So think about the Hartzell-Macaulay where you only had oil doing one thing, right? Either driving it to the prop or draining it off. Well, if we think about it like that, think of this as the same way. Your pilot valve is either going to send oil to the backside of the dome through the distributor valve, or it's going to drain oil from the backside of the dome through the distributor valve, or it's going to, three choices, send it to the prop, drain it from the prop, or
Keep it in the prop.
keep it in the prop. It's the same thing. Just doing it to the backside, right? Ignore the yellow. Whoops.
Looks like an
There we
animation.
go.
I know. Now let's do it. Ignore the yellow. So the governor. There we go. Underspeed. Underspeed, it is going to add oil or drain oil from the backside.
Drain.
Drain.
Drain. How do we know that? Kind of had to memorize it. All right. It's going to drain oil. So is this like a single or a twin in that way, the drain or the add?
Single.
All right. So underspeed, drain, flatten. Sounds like a
Single.
Single.
single. All right. So the hydromatic, does the hydromatic have counterweights?
No.
Tends to work like a
Single.
single engine. So governor pressure on a single acting governor, we are overspeed going to do what? What are we going to do with the high pressure?
Add oil to the
What are we going to do with the high pressure? Add it or drain it?
Add oil.
Add it. The-
Underspeed.
Oh, you said overspeed.
Sorry, underspeed.
Underspeed, we're gonna take away from.
Going to drain the high oil pressure. And by the way, there's going to be some engine oil going through it to the front to assist. All right, underspeed. Overspeed. Okay, now it's the opposite. And let's take a look at the distributor valve real quick. Everything that's yellow in this one is yellow in that one. Yep. Be easier to see if I would line the slides, but I didn't, so whatever. So just comes through the engine oil pump, and it's doing the same thing. So it's just kind of right there. Is it draining it off, really? I don't see that it's draining it at all. It's just, I mean, do you see a spot here where it drains?
No.
So we have a pump that's pumping it through, even though it looks like it comes through the middle.
Either doesn't pump or it does.
What is 15? I have 15 on here. It's weird. Because you don't need to drain it. Why would you not have to provide a drain for the engine oil?
Have to check it out.
What's that?
It just gets forced in.
What's more?
It's gonna go.
What's more, 20, the red or the yellow?
Red.
Right, so if you didn't provide a drain, if you didn't provide some way to shut off the pump going to it and provide a drain, like we do with the governor's at 350, 450 PSI or more. Okay, the 50, 60 PSI out of the engine oil is really not going to make, at that point it's like, hey, do your best, buddy. You're not going to
Well,
win.
If anything, it's going to get pulled through the governor pump.
Yeah. All right, so centrifugal force generated by the overspeed. Centrifugal force generated in the flyweights exceeds governor spring force. Pilot valve is raised, uncovering passages in the boost pump, which is the governor. Drive shaft, governor oil flows to the prop inboard dome, moving the piston outboard from the oil from the prop dome outboard end returns to the engine oil supply. Piston linear motion, meaning back and forth, converted to rotary motion by the cam. Here's the cam. Increases blade pitch. Blade pitch decreases, engine and governor return to the on-speed condition. So, right, and where is all this switching happening? In the distributor valve or the governor pilot valve?
Governor. Pilot
Yes.
valve.
You talked about like the 350, 450 psi from the governor,
Yeah.
and then it's gear driven.
hmm
How do you get that 350, 450 psi out of it from those?
Pressure relief valve.
So it's just cranked.
It's a constant displacement pump. So it is going to pump oil until it gets the pressure it wants. And then the check valve will open up and bleed off anything in excess of what you set it for. It's not a flow. I mean, you've got a sealed unit right there.
Yeah.
Once it fills this up, it's going to just build up pressure until it either blows up or the relief valve actuates. All right. On speed,
Nothing changes.
pilot valve shuts off. It does not send oil up front. Engine oil pressure is already built up here, holding it back. So you have those two things working, and it just holds still. All right, now it gets interesting.
Green.
Now it gets interesting.
Fun times. You push the button.
All right. Feathering system. So the key to the feathering system, I will tell you a story. Let me see. There we go. Here's my old timey. All right. So aircraft that have this system, take a look at what we have here in the feathering system. Now before, in the feathering system, for all of the other ones, Hartzels, Macaulay's, how did you feather? How did the pilot feather it? Pull the prop lever all the way back. It's going to go into feather. All right? It's not, and so there were no other parts in there. You just had a pilot, something that would pull up the pilot valve on the governor and let it go into feather. If you had a nicer system, you'd have accumulators that would help you unfeather, if you remember. That's what accumulator did. Okay, but this system is very different. I already showed you the tank, the oil tank, how it had a different standpipe. So if you lost oil pressure for the oil supply to the engine, you maintain a little bit left to run the governor. So here's our governor. And I said governor, I meant the feathering pump. So now we got the feathering button with a holding coil, the pressure cutoff switch, solenoid, oil tank, and the distributor valve comes into play, which we don't have on here. So you wish to feather the engine. 1, push in the feathering button. Notice there's a battery, therefore there's electrical stuff happening. Solenoids and whatnot. So there's a holding coil. A holding coil is an electromagnet. So when you push in the feathering button, you are going to complete the contacts, which go through the battery and make an electromagnet that holds the button in. You push the button in, boom, click, it stays. Won't come out, stuck there. I suppose you grabbed it and pulled it, might work, but all right. So it's stuck there. So it works. So because the button is in and it finishes the contacts, it should come around and open up the solenoid relay. You should know what a relay does, but I will remind you because you're like, oh, thank God he's going to remind us. Notice that this is a very big fat wire, and you have to have not wire shaming or body shaming the wire, but you need a big old fat wire going to the big old fat motor. And if you don't, then the little tiny wire will burn up. Well, it does not make sense to run a big old fat wire to this switch and then make a giant Frankenstein switch, right? The big, you've seen the movies, the big old double you don't want a switch that's, yeah, old Sparky, yeah, right, yeah, right. You don't want to. You want just a small switch up in the cockpit. So remember, the solenoid, little tiny wires do the job of big wires. So little tiny wire is the remote control, if you will, comes around and it turns on the solenoid with these big old, right here, it makes the contact, so you only have to have one fat wire. Not a big fat wire going from the battery to the switch or the big switch, backing around and all that. Okay, so interestingly, this is not an electrical, now this is oil pressure. So red is either electrical or it's oil pressure. So right now red is the electrical, starts the pump. The pump is going to start running, this is a pump, and it's going to take oil and send it through a pressure cutoff switch, up through the governor, and we'll talk about that, into the distributor valve, and then it is going to put oil to the back side of the dome, because we know that from our last slides, and push that dome all the way forward, causing the blades to go into feather. This pressure cutoff switch is going to build up to about 600 psi. When it gets to 600 psi, it is going to open and it is going to kill the power that went around to the holding coil and the button will pop out. Like a cigarette lighter. And you guys are like a what?
Cigar lighter.
See, now when I was a child, every car came with an ashtray and a cigarette lighter. And you pushed the little cigarette lighter in, and you waited for. And Mom would get out her cigarettes and pack them and get one out, right? Like she was gonna, change the pitch on a prop, and they would pop out when it was done, and then you would, light your cigarette.
Oh, does it by itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it had a little holding coil. So when it got red hot, it would pink, it would pop, and your parents were already to get their smoke on, right? What's that?
His mom didn't wait for it to blink out on its own. She just pulled it out when she was ready.
I guess so.
Oh yeah. Do it now.
Oh yeah, as a child, man, I was a 3-pack of smoke a day kid.
Yeah. It shows.
Yep. Explains a lot. Okay, so that pressure builds up, kills the holding coil. The holding coil releases, pops out. The motor stops, and you look out the window. Would you look at that? The prop feathered. It's all done.
Holy cow.
So I have a friend who had bought a Twin Beach. Oh, I don't have. I used to have pictures all around here. Which is it has Pratt & Whitney 985s on it. It's a Beechcraft, and it had these Hamilton standard props on it. And so he bought it, and he went up with somebody who was very familiar with these airplanes, flew a lot of freight in them, and he checked them out, and they were flying around, and he said, well, I guess I should probably know what it's like when we shut down an engine, huh? And, yeah, that would be a good idea. Well, let's go ahead and shut down the engine and feather it. Shut down the engine. Big button says feather. Hit the button. Shut the engine down. Props roll in. Look at that. A beautiful feather. Running nice on this engine. And, all right. Flew around a little bit. All right. I get it. Let's go ahead and start that thing up and go ahead and take it back in. I don't have an unfeather button on my side. You have an unfeather button on your side? I do not have an unfeather. They did not know how to unfeather it. So, yeah, he's telling the story that I told him the answer. He goes, yeah, I know now. He was like, you're ruining my story, asshole. So I'm like, sorry. And it didn't help that just some punk kid knew the answer either. So there is no unfeather button. There is a feathering button. So to unfeather, you push the button in, but if you push it in, it'll pop right back out. Because what will happen is you'll push it in, it'll start the holding coil. The holding coil will hold it in place. It will start the motor. The motor will spin up. It will take oil. It will put it into the already feathered prop, reaching 600 psi very rapidly, releasing the pressure cutoff switch and popping the button out. Well, that doesn't work. But if you take the button and you press it in, it starts the pump. The pump goes to 600 psi. Then it goes to 650. And then it goes to 7, and then it goes to about 750, and there's a big spring in the distributor valve that has been holding it in one position this entire time. Well, when we exceed that pressure, it takes a pilot valve in there and slides it over a little bit. And when it slides it over a little bit because of that massive amount of pressure, where it was sending all that oil to the back of the dome and pushing it this way, it realigns it and goes to the front. And all that pressure pushes it back. And as soon as it starts coming back and the propeller starts to pick up its angle and it starts to windmill and the governor starts working, let go of the button, shut off the pump, and the engine starts running.
Nice.
Those
You push it in all the way.
double click.
Push it all the way but hold it. Because you got to get through the cutoff,
And really hold the button.
build up that pressure until the distributor valve inside the front of the crankshaft realigns and start pushing the oil pump here, the electric oil pump pressure, realigns to the front and starts pushing the dome backwards.
So just once the propeller starts when
Spinning, you can let go.
up.
Yeah. That's really a cool movie. It's kind of corny, but I love those things. All right. Oh, wow, that's break time. Okay.